Hello and welcome to this fourth tutorial video on how to make a jointed teddy bear. I've turned all of the parts right side out, the head, body, 2 legs and 2 arms. I'm going to need 5 sets of joints, so that's 5 pairs of hardwood discs, 5 pairs of washers and 5 split pins, and I'll turn the pins using these needle nose pliers. I'm going to stuff the bear when it's jointed with plastic pellets and polyfibre in this case. Because there are some specialist techniques, we'll concentrate on stuffing the head in this video. I'm going to use just the polyfibre and something with a round end. I'm using a pencil as a stuffer. I have my pliers and a complete set for one joint. A bear of this size will use about 230 grams of stuffing, so that's enough to really cram an A3 bag, a big bag. And well over half of that stuffing actually goes into the head. It has to be really firmly packed into the head, particularly on the muzzle here, because if this muzzle is too soft, when you stitch the nose, it's just going to crumple. So it's really important to concentrate first of all on stuffing the muzzle well. I'm just using my fingers at this point to push it in because I can feel how well it's going into the muzzle, and you've got to make sure you get it right to the very end. It's easy to form little pockets and air bubbles in there, so you want to make sure that you use small pieces and you cram it in. Really push it in. Now I've used up all of the stuffing that was on the table. I'm going to go back to the bag that I'm keeping at the side of me. I didn't have it all on the table because it would literally have filled the screen and you wouldn't have been able to see anything that I was doing. So I'm keeping the bag with the stuffing next to me. And I just keep taking out small pieces and cramming them in there. Now, it really is quite amazing how much stuffing will go into this and how much of that goes into the muzzle. I'm using my thumbs now because it's a little broader and I can start pushing the larger amounts in that have started to accumulate in the head. Every time you loose it, that stuffing is going to start popping back out. I'm going to use the pencil now to really pack it in there. The nose is sitting in my hand and I'm pushing the stuffing in with the end of the pencil. You can use a wooden spoon or whatever. Speeding up now because I think you're getting the message that there's a lot of stuffing going in here. And just keep packing it in and packing it in. Keep going back to pushing it into the nose, cramming it in there, and keep giving it a squeeze. That's still quite soft, so there's lots and lots more to go in. Packing it in with your thumb, with the pencil. Keep feeling that until it's got to be really quite firm so that you can stitch through it with your nose thread without squashing the end of the nose completely. It's got to keep its shape. And then once you're happy the nose is quite full, and I am now, slow it back down, I'm going to finish cramming, stuffing it into the head. I'll still keep pushing onto the muzzle there to make sure the muzzle's pretty full. As I say, it does have a tendency to pop out, but once you're happy that that's really quite firm, then he's nearly ready. I'm going to give him a last push of his stuffing into his muzzle, into his nose. Then I can just give it a last squeeze. That's really quite nice and firm. That'll do, I think. I'm going to make sure the fabric isn't tucked in around the edge of the neck, and make sure that the head has enough stuffing. I want to be able to pull it in, gather it, but I also want it to have that nice rounded shape at the back of the head, so a last little bit of stuffing just to fill the back of the head, and that should do the trick. That's good. Right, ready to go. The head, arms and legs of our bear are jointed with cotter pin joints, and they consist of 2 hardboard discs, 2 washers and a split pin. Our hardboard discs have a smooth surface and a textured surface. The smooth surface sits against the washer, the textured against the fabric. We use a split pin with a flat head. Pop these pieces off to one side until we need them, and you can see clearly. Split pin. Place a washer with a hole small enough that the head of the pin doesn't go through it, obviously, and then the smooth surface of the hardboard disc sits against the washer. That means if there's any turning, the washer doesn't cause friction against the texture. And we just need to pop the hardboard disc and washer somewhere safe until we need them. This first part of the joint that we've created with the pin, the washer and the disc are going to sit inside the head, but in order to draw the fabric tight around them, we need to use a double length of extra strong thread, and we're going to sew all the way around the head with running stitch. I'll put a link to running stitch here, and that's going to create a kind of drawstring bag effect. So just small stitches, the same sort of seam allowance. If you're worried that your fabric might fray a little or your threads might pull through, give yourself a little extra seam allowance. Take it up to maybe 7mm and go all the way around with running stitch. I'm using a thread that's quite close to the colour of the backing fabric on my mohair. The end of my thread's pulled in there, but I'll pull it out at the end, it won't matter. I've tied a knot there to make sure it didn't just completely pull through, because I'm going to need to pull out both ends of this double thread so that I can tie the knot. So I'm going all the way around with running stitch. And small stitches. The smaller the stitches, really, the neater your gather is going to be here. Go right up to the edge here. Don't skip across the gap. Make it small stitches that go right to the seam. And then across to the opposite side. Tiny little stitches. I don't know if you can hear the wind here. It's an evening, and it's a wintry evening, and every now and again the windows rattle a little, but isn't that just the perfect time to be sitting and crafting? It's cold outside, but it's lovely and snug in here, and I'm making a bear. All the way around. And back to our original position at the back of the head. Now I've got to see if I can find that little knot at the end, and I'm going to pull that thread out so that I've got my two ends dangling. Now with my half made joint, I'm going to pop that into the head, and this is where an extra pair of hands come in really useful. So while I'm pulling on these two ends, I'm going to ask Maria to hold on to his muzzle and the cotter pin while I pull that tight and tie it. As we've said before, if you wrap your thread around twice on this knot, it's less likely to slide back open. Give it a good pull and tie another double knot. There we go. We want to make sure this is tight enough that that joint's not going to pull out. That's lovely. And then we need to deal with these ends, and we'll do this in exactly the same way that we deal with all of our loose ends in bear making. We're going to pass the ends through a doll needle. Oh, the end with a hole in it's useful. I always find it much easier to thread that end. And then back in where the knot is and out somewhere else on the head, avoiding the hardboard disc obviously, and then pull it tight and snip close to the fabric without cutting the pile. That's one, and then we'll deal with the other one. Now this is the one that's got the knot on the end, so I need to snip that knot off before I can do anything else. And then pass that through the eye of the needle. I've got two ends here. Doesn't always work first time, but it did then. Back in where the knot is, as close to the knot as possible, and out somewhere else on the head, so that I'm pulling the threads through. Pull them tight, and then snip as close to the fabric without cutting the pile. There we go, and that's done. Our first part of our joint is there in the head, and that's lovely. In our next tutorial video, we'll look at jointing the head, arms and legs to the body of our bear. That concludes our tutorial video. I hope it's been helpful. If it has, please subscribe to the channel, give us some feedback and a like. There are more videos coming soon.